the reason I paired these two poems, and again, I feel a little bit embarrassed to have paired my work with Carolyn's work, but Carolyn has this book that many of you all know. About the relationship of Diego and Frida. Frida Kahlo is an artist I've been interested in. I first saw her work, I was living in Mexico when I was 20, so that was a long, long time ago. And she wasn't really, I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and you just see her everywhere. She's just everywhere, shopping bags. You know, you actually see like velvet paintings with Elvis and Frida, and you know, it's like she's everywhere. She's an icon, you would agree. But this was kind of before she had before the first biography had come out, and she was known, but not in the iconic way. So I got interested in her at an early age. And then I think I said this to Carolyn once, it's kind of hard now to find a way into her story, at least I feel that, because she has become so iconic. And, but what Carolyn did in her book so beautifully to me was really, it's the relationship. So, and Carolyn and her husband have actually even recorded more than one or several. If you know this book, it's really the interweaving of Carolyn and Patricio as Frida and Diego. Is kind of how I read it. So I think what my point I'm going to make when we get into the other Frida poem, my poem, is that if I had the assignment for us, everybody write about, I don't know, Thomas Jefferson, which has been done now, Monticello in Mind, is a really wonderful collection that came out from University of Virginia Press. Everybody's angle in would be extremely personal. And I think for me, when I get interested in writing about a topic like circus, or I have a poem in here about Carl Sandburg's daughter, it often takes me a long time to figure out what is my angle going to be. Like, here's the topic, but if you don't kind of have some energy behind the angle, then it's not going to work, if that sort of makes sense. So what I'd like is for Carolyn to read her poem, and then to me her subject matter was really the relationship, this very complicated, passionate love affair, but certainly Diego was a bit of a jerk, although I think she would have been hard to live with too. That's my takeaway. So, and this is one of the last poems in her book. Do you want to?
Yes. Yeah. Letter to Diego. What is it that connects us? You said you loved me in my Tijuana dress. You said you loved my black hair secured with steel red ribbons and combs and buckling like a braided snake. How long did it take you to become a maelstrom around my neck? Swirling water spun into a silken noose and tightening. I cannot deny my anger. Your world teems with other women. Your model Nahui, then Christina, my own sister, how could you? The thought of you sleeping with others changes my heart into an hourglass that empties into the veins of every woman you've bedded. I cannot deny my hurt. You gave me child after child, each torn from my womb, umbilical cord spiraling out of me like groundless roots. After my third baby died, the doctor cut off my toes, while you, selfish and callous, painted pretty Christina into your epic of the Mexican people, her two children seated beside her, covering me with their oblivion. And so I loosened my long hair, sheared it to take you down with me where I lay exposed, blood splattered. How much can a person endure? I lie immobile on my four-poster bed, the past unraveling like one of your murals. Some people suffer a single tragedy, but I have suffered too. After the first, a bus accident, I remember hearing voices, a handrail piercing my body, the severed organ spilling, a communion of blood. You, Diego, are my other tragedy. I would tear you piece by piece from my heart, but I have nearly lost my soul. I can no longer bear loneliness, your affairs, your lies. And yet my legs shorn from me like a lost ribbon, my spine a withered branch. When I die, I will fly back to you on gilt wings.
So if you go right before this, on page 5, this is a poem that I wrote on Frida Kahlo, and sort of hesitated to write on Frida Kahlo because I had recently finished Carolyn's book, and because she is really this topic that is so much in, I think, women's vocabulary, and you see her everywhere in Mexico. But for about 6 summers in a row, I took my daughter to Oaxaca, Mexico, which, if you don't know Oaxaca, the movie Coco is all set in the culture of Oaxaca. And there's this wonderful little museum. It's actually called the Postal Museum, which is a little misleading title, but there was an exhibit, which I'll read about in a minute, in 2016, and this exhibit was all letters of Frida Kahlo and photographs, but they were mostly letters to her doctor, and it was about her struggle to become a mother. She never could become a mother because she'd had all these terrible injuries, and it was this longing to have a child that really spoke to me. I'm not going to get too personal, but I had a complicated story becoming a mother. I have an amazing 20-year-old daughter who's adopted from China. And after we went to this exhibit, later in the day, we were out in this parade. Oaxaca's full of parades in the summer. And there were a group of women with these beautiful black braids walking down the street in costume. And my daughter, who had braids that day, got in line behind them. So I actually have a photograph of them and her, which really became the poem for me. So what I'm, again, trying to make the point is that this same subject can become a very personal entryway. Even telling you the story I just told you, I would have a hard time writing that story. It's a little hard for me to talk about. It's also my story, so it's not really something I need to publish as an essay. And yet the experience of connecting with that shared part of her became really important to me. So the poem is called Correspondence, Trenzas. Trenzas is the Spanish word for braids. And I wanted, I hope, the title to resonate both with the idea that it was an exhibit of letters, but that I felt there was this braiding of my story and her story that took place in the poem. So this was published in a journal, and the editor wanted this epigraph. So there's a lot of information, I think. As a young woman, the Mexican painter Frida Kahlo suffered an injury that left her unable to have children. An exhibit of her letters and photographs was held at El Museo de la Filatelia in Oaxaca in 2016. This old afternoon can't stop talking. So many ghosts assemble, their scent fresh as your paintings. Green rain in the courtyard outside these walls. So many versions of the same question, each one hollowed with longing. ¿Podría yo tener un hijo? Could I have a child? Letters to your doctor, to your lovers, photographs of you, your husband, and his lovers. In one, you hold your sister's boy, un chamaquito dressed like a charro, the weight, the warmth of him, as if he were your own. So many versions of the same question. La sangre, Diego, el mono, el bebé. So many failures, none of them really yours. This afternoon grows old with names. So come with us now, estimada Frida. Had you really wanted so much? Come with us, out into the city's unruly elegance, joining the procession we've all been waiting for. Come out with us into your mother's ancient city, its graffitied beauty, this waning day where a battered off-key trumpet leads us on, and streets wind through cobbled neighborhoods, festooned doorways crowded with flowers. And look, rows of young women march up ahead, black as their eyes, their identical braids wound with brilliant ribbons, urge you to come out into this twinned tenderness, these lines of daughters, each of them now yours. 1,000 reinventions of the wanted child. There's only a little time. We must move slowly, trailing faithfully behind La Virgen, who rides in grandeur on her flatbed truck, holding tight her son, her other hand stretched out toward us and offering what we know is ours. Water behind the dust, purpled clouds shot through with light, and another morning when the doves will sound again from the neighbor's roof, and roses, just visible now. See them? There, out beyond the far, indifferent hills.